Here we go. I did it. That's my first time post-COVID ever clicking the record button on Zoom. So thank you so much for being here. We have a busy year coming up for elections. And so thank you for your interest in the research committee. I hope that you, after hearing our chat today and communicating with us and talking with us, that you'll want to participate again. The first thing that I want to be sure that I do is welcome the wonderful individual to my right, Felicia White, who is working with us on the research and endorsements process this year. Felicia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am from Cincinnati. I graduated from Xavier University in 2020, and then I was a legislative aide at the State House for Rep. Cedric Denson for about a year and a half. And then I hopped on with the Matriots in maybe like April of last year. I did like some communications work last year and just kind of wherever I was needed. And then this year I'll be hopping on the endorsement process and helping that run smoothly. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to get into the work.
We are so thankful to have you here. You have probably worked probably closely with either Kim Crawford-Swade or with Bridgen last year, or maybe even Anne Marie. And so this year I'm trying to have Felicia do a combination of working both on the endorsements process and on the research process, in the hopes that it has a nice flow to it and the information is more easily carried from the research process over to endorsements. This year is an odd year. It's state year B, which means that we are in very local elections this year. We are in school boards, we are in city councils, mayoral races, some township trustee races, potentially some city auditors or city commissions, really local levels. And that means that it's also going to be a year of more races. There are over 6,500 races, contested races on the ballot for this year. That's where we expect to see it. We anticipate less races in the contested primaries, which is in May. We do have a contested primary in May, and then we'll have the general election in November. It is possible that there will be primaries a little bit later for certain communities, but generally we see those in May and again in November. If it's anything like 2021, we did have a September primary. That was our latest primary, was the first week of September. And that's really late to have a primary. There are some cities that don't have primaries that one would expect that they may, so there may be a large number of candidates, for example, in Cincinnati, where we would have expected potentially a primary to weed out a few of the contestants. But the last time Cincinnati had a city council race, I think there were 47 candidates on the ballot for Cincinnati City Council. Not all of them ours. Though all of ours, I think it was all of ours we endorsed one, or we at least have endorsed every woman who is on Cincinnati City Council. So we have a good record there. We anticipate, as in 2021, about an hour of research per candidate. More likely than not, this research is harder to do than our state district races. This research takes a little more time and a little more digging into Facebook pages, background information and news stories from local communities, and our local community focus of our endorsement committee will be helpful here as well in understanding what some of the factors are for particular races across the state of Ohio. We anticipate probably about 20 candidates for the May primary. We had less than that in 2021. It is possible we could have a total of 200 candidates for the November general election, which is a lot. So we are trying to find ways to streamline our research processes as well, and streamline our application processes so that individuals who we've previously endorsed for the same role may give us updated information and can hopefully use a little less background research than those who are brand new to us. we will have the same, let me take a pause. Let me breathe for a second. What questions do you have so far before I keep going? On the timing and the timeline, the number of candidates. Toba.
Well, this is an administrative detail. What is the idea of notifying us that we have candidates to do research on? Because at one point we would get some kind of notification. In another instance, I had the feeling we were supposed to be checking Basecamp. So, and I don't know, is Basecamp still going to be used?
So we still have Basecamp access. I feel like you're more likely to be excited and understand the work that's to be done if we assign and give you a list and email it out to you. But you tell me if that sounds incorrect, if you rather, you're a self-starter and you want to just log in and see what's available.
No, I prefer getting a list directly so that it puts me on notice that I have to do something and who I have to do with it, as opposed to going through the general list or reminding myself that I need to check, an online document.
I think that's perfect for us. And one of the things that I've really asked Felicia to focus on is standardizing a timeline for us. So it's not as seat of the pants as it maybe has been occasionally in the past. So making sure that we have a week, if we can, to the extent we can, having a week of interviews for this May primary, letting the candidates know at the time of application what that week is going to be, and therefore all of us being ready for that week of interviews in advance of the week. And that would hopefully then standardize the timeline that we have for the research and the timeline for the endorsement committee. What they do with the research that you produce, I guess I should say this for those who may be watching this and it's their first time, is that we do this research, that the candidate applies. We do research, background research on the candidate to determine whether it looks like a values alignment, and also to tell us a little bit about the community and the race that they're running in. And then we hand that over to our endorsement committee for the interviews and the review of the candidate to make a determination on an endorsement recommendation to the board. So this work is critical and vitally important, because what we've seen, especially recently in the last 2 years probably, is that candidates will check, yes, I align with all those values, but a little bit of digging shows us maybe some deeper questions we should be asking about that alignment. And I found the research incredibly helpful, having done it myself, and then also having reviewed the research that you all do. It is pivotal for our understanding of who our candidates are. So getting back to Toba's question, yes, I think we should maybe assign particular candidates to you. Starting, my guess is if there are 20 candidates, you'll get 1 to 2 candidates based on the size of the committee right now, maybe only 1. And you do research on that candidate. We might have to remind you one time. We'll give you a length of time by which we need the information back. We'll send a little reminder, and then hopefully we can integrate that information, do what's called a merge of that information at the last day, after getting information back from you. We'll also give you a template, which we've done in the past. We'll give you a template form of things to look for and information to fill out that is helpful for us in our review.
And once I got the hang of it, I appreciated the change to having the I don't know if it was a Word research document that we could cut and paste stuff into that.
Yeah.
And then take it and put it in the Google document or whatever it is that we ultimately, if you're going to continue that, where that was the one that was actually submitted, that we were supposed to complete that document, hit submit, and that's what would go in.
So you liked having it be able to be done both ways?
Yeah, because I can save the I call it the Word document, whatever it is, on my computer, and then bring up that document, do all my cut and paste and editing and things on that
Mhm.
document, then what I do is I pull up the document you want submitted, which I think is a Google
A
document.
Google form, yep.
Google form, and then I just cut and paste from my saved document. It also makes it easier for me to keep the document in case something happened to the Google document that got submitted, which had occurred on one or two of my research in the past few years. So that I keep it till probably for the year in case something happens with it. And I do appreciate the fact of candidates running for the same office,
Mhm.
just having them do updates. Because in the it was like, okay, we're going to cut and paste and double check resources and stuff of what we did before. And
Yep.
yeah, that certainly would help.
I think when we get to any kind of critical mass, we had 61 candidates we endorsed this year. We reviewed over 70, and the amount of time it just takes to, sit down, dig in. I personally was surprised at how long the research can take, that it can take to about an hour if you're really looking hard. And it's a smaller race. Some of these candidates don't have websites yet. Some of them don't. They've maybe made a Facebook page. They maybe have not. And so learning about who they are can be challenging. So I often say, if you don't find anything within 30 minutes, give up on this candidate and we'll see what we can do internally. But
the other thing that made it difficult last year was the redistricting issue, where there were candidates who thought they were running in some district and then no district and then some other district, because you'd start to do research and then suddenly there was one candidate who totally withdrew.
Yeah.
And then other candidates that, okay, you did the research and then they went into a different district, which wouldn't necessarily affect their background, but it did affect some of the demographic information.
Absolutely. And for many of them, it actually affected whether they ran. So we ended up doing some amount of research on candidates that didn't actually end up running or did not, pursue past the primary. We had at least one candidate that we endorsed and then didn't end up on the ballot. So I am thankful to have 2022 from those reasons in the rearview mirror, but it will, a little bit of fun foreshadowing of 2024 is that we will get to relive those moments again next year. But we're focusing on this year. Hi, Andrea, nice to see you. For focusing on this year, I really appreciate hearing that there are those two. I actually had forgotten about the two different platforms. So using the Word document and then uploading that information into the Google form, which is really helpful for us because when we send out a Google form, the back end to us creates a spreadsheet of information that is the same across every candidate. Without us having to merge the information together. So that's one of the reasons why the Google form helps a lot. It's actually the same way we do the endorsement applications for the candidates, is that they all get a Google form, and that form then shows in the background. I can pull up individually candidates, I can pull up groups of candidates, or I can see the whole totality of the group that's applied and the same information from each one. Other questions, Liz? I know nothing. I saw you could do a couple of nods. Anything? No.
No, it's good to know that it starts off small so that you can kind of wrap your head around it and then go into that. And so, and you mentioned that you kind of provide like ideas of where to source information, things like that. And I'm sure you'd be available if I had further questions of anything else. So, yeah.
We will send, for folks on the committee, we will send a packet of information. It will have kind of guidelines of who serves on these committees. You have to be a member, but also, we want folks who can be confidential about the information that they review, because we're going to be taking that in and using it through our process. And sometimes some of the information that we find about candidates is not the most savory thing for that to be. I mean, it's public, everything we find is publicly available, but sometimes it's not the most savory thing. So we do ask for confidentiality from our research committee members. We we like that, many of our research committee members like that they're able to do their work kind of on their own time. The endorsement committee meetings, they happen at the exact same time. Everybody has to come together. But for the research committee, you're able to do this sort of at your own pace within the week or so that we give for the individual candidates. That said, if there's ever a desire for folks to get together and be in person, we are happy to do that. As you can see, Felicia and I are together. And so we're also happy to make that accommodation if folks want to be together to do research. That could be fun too. I'm pulling up a little bit of additional information for research, just making sure that I have everything that you all need. We'll provide a checklist to you. That checklist will give you, again, those ideas of where to go for research ideas, and some useful tips about how to conduct the Google research. You could go into Google rabbit holes on people. You don't have to. Some candidates you'll have a lot of information on, and others you'll have less. So we do a cutoff at some point. You don't have to give us everything about the candidate. And I find Ballotopedia, so I think that's how you say it, Ballotopedia, one of the more useful and fact-based websites on a candidate's position. It's harder in the more local races, but especially in larger cities, there'll be information for those individuals. Take a deep breath.
I don't have my document. I've got, the tips from before, but I don't have the document, the application in front of me, or a copy of it. But one thing I've noticed, or I found in a lot of candidates, and I'm not sure how the question is asked, and that is about social media, campaign sites or stuff like that, is if there's a question, I think why it comes up in doing the research is, research results on candidate Facebook, Google, web search. And I use that to do the complete search, doing a search for them on all social media. So Twitter, LinkedIn, campaign website, Facebook. So I don't know if there's something in the application that can ask them to give all social media that they're on, because it saves us. I mean, we can check those sites, but it saves us from trying to find them.
Yeah. Do you know what the way the question is worded?
Yeah, on the application, we ask for the campaign website, we ask for your campaign Facebook link, but I don't think we ask for just
Social media.
What social media do you have, and can you give us your handle? So that can definitely be something that we can add to the application.
Because that's where you can, I mean, I've found some interesting things in going into this other social media. And I've always put the links on for the endorsement, or the endorsement committees to look at them, because some of them I'm not registered with to actually go in and look at the stuff.
But you're right, it is incredibly helpful. And it's one of the places where I personally have found information that is counter to what is put forth in the application. So we have not opened the application yet. We plan to open at the end of January. And so that is definitely something we can add into the application process and see what information can come from the candidates. That's a very easy fix. Some of them will fill that out, some of them maybe won't, but at least it would save a ton of time from the trying to determine whether that picture matches the picture that you have in front of you of the candidate.
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yes, I've looked at stuff and said, is that the candidate or not?
Right. Is it just another Shirley Smith? Yep. So that is a great question. And we do anticipate opening the application towards the end of January, closing it towards the end of February. Candidate, I'm going to have to look at Felicia again. Candidate certification, the filing deadline for candidates is February 1st for the contested primaries. And then give us the next date. When is certification by the Secretary of State?
So all the Board of Elections have to certify by the 13th
Mhm.
of February, and then protests for those candidates. Any protest against those candidates has to be filed by Friday, February 17th. For partisan candidates who would be running in the primary.
And many of these races, like school boards, aren't generally partisan races. So a large bulk of our candidates and many of the city councils, especially suburban city councils or rural city councils, are also nonpartisan. So what we found in 2021 is that there weren't a ton of partisan candidates. We'll just have to, I don't actually know off the top of my head. I could probably go into the endorsement roadmap and look at each one that is contested. But it is not nearly as many. It's usually the larger cities, Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, Toledo, those city council races. What other questions can we answer for you? We'll provide a packet of information. First of all, being on this call does not necessarily mean that you have to join the committee. If you're like, this is terrifying, that's fine too. But if you do want to join the committee, we'll send out a bulk of information within this month that'll have the whole packet of information, how to access that Basecamp folder that Toba's mentioning. So you'll have the email with all the information in it. But if you say, oh my gosh, I deleted that email, or if you're like me and stuff sometimes goes into an abyss because you're a very busy person, you can also go to the Basecamp folder and find all of the background materials that are necessary. Pull down that Word document that Toba mentioned as a template, and that way you'll have all the background information that's necessary. Or you can email us because we're pretty accessible. It's our first name dot our last name at matriotsohio.com. There's also endorsement with no S, endorsement at matriotsohio.com. That's another email address that gets to us. And we have phones, carrier pigeons, smoke signals. It's the most important, it's some of the most important work we do. So getting it right is critical, is vitally critical for us.
Are there any judicial races this year?
There are municipal judicial races. We are not endorsing in any judicial
Okay,
races.
you're not, okay.
Mm-mm. We endorse in every local election and every statewide election, not federal elections. And the two statewide elections that we don't endorse in yet are the lieutenant gubernatorial races, which happened this past year, and judicial races outside of the state Supreme Court. So we endorse in the Supreme Court races, but not below that level. And actually the reason, one of the biggest reasons for that is a research-based reason. We're a values-based organization. We have 5 values that we endorse around. Those are access to education, equity and independence, dominion over our own bodies, healthy, safe communities in which to raise our families, and economic empowerment for women. It is really hard for judges because of their judicial canons to say where they fall on particular values that will lead to the outcome of cases. So for judges, we would need to review prior case law to learn their background and how they tend to view these type of cases that might come up with these values. And the only ones that have a book of precedent are those running for the Supreme Court. Generally, some of the courts of appeals, but many of the courts of appeals not. So it's a research hurdle.
Except the judicial site that was set up with the University of Akron for the judiciary is really a good site. But yeah, there are issues as to why you'd want to limit what you do.
Yeah, we're also closer to getting to parity in the judicial in Ohio, the judiciary in Ohio, which is great. We're not there yet, but we're closer, much closer than we are in legislative and executive office. So maybe a someday.
It's because more women, I think a lot of schools, women make up at least 50% of the law school classes now.
And we're terrifying when we're lawyers. Just kidding. What else? can I answer for you? Felicia, what did I forget?
For some reason, this past cycle, I had to do more on the question, like, do you have you filed bankruptcies, or if there's other litigation? I don't know how that question is worded. I've actually had to go in and find, I mean, I was fortunate because bankruptcy research is really a pain in the butt to do because of the PACER system for the federal courts. But if it's possible, in that question about litigation, bankruptcy, if they answer yes, it's best for them to fully explain why it's a yes.
This isn't required, that's really it, we have that question.
Because there was one person who, when I actually was able to find the information, for me, it became a non-issue. I mean, I put the information out as to what the case was about, but I think it was a non-issue because of the length of time plus how they got involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a partner issue as opposed to them having to, they initiated the problem as opposed to them initiating the problem. But if we're going to ask that question, I think we need more details from them as to why they answered yes, with specific, if there's a case site,
That would be
which
great.
depending on the court, we can access certainly with the Supreme Court searching all cases. And then I think all 88 counties now have fulfilled the requirement to upload all their documents on all cases.
Yeah. So
So
Felicia's looking at the application right now. It's a nested question. I think what we can do, why don't we do this? We're gonna leave the have you ever filed for bankruptcy or are you in any proceedings questions, and then just require these narrative responses. And then an NA, yeah, they'll just skip it. Our application is already incredibly wieldy, so I don't want to have them have to upload documentation.
No, yeah, they don't have to do that. It just makes it easier for us to do the research. If we have a site, we have a date. Yes, they should give a narrative as to, because one of them did, and they were very honest about the narrative. But if they put in a date and the status of whatever this is,
Mhm.
in a short narrative, and if
I
there
think
is
that
a
would be
citation, yeah, they don't need to upload documents, just giving us enough that we can look it up.
Yep, I think this works, and we can also call them back, right? We can, if we have a response, very few people have a response yes to this. So
Exactly.
we can also call and either call and ask them, or we can include it. It tends to be asked in the endorsement interview as well. If there's a click yes, can you explain, was this a financial matter? Did it have to do with a fiduciary responsibility?
It leads to that question, but I think the people on the endorsement committee would like some background, because then that also plays into how does the candidate respond,
Yes,
if asked, when you've got some background information too.
I think that's
you
right.
already know some of the details.
I think that's
Yeah.
really helpful, Zoba. I'm gonna plug in my computer so I don't lose you all and you don't lose each other. What else? Okay. Well, if there aren't other questions, these are all great questions. I'm glad I recorded this. This is very helpful. What we will be doing is we're gonna have another research call next week in the evening. You do not have to join that call. If you join this call, you don't have to join that call. This will be repeating the same information. And then we'll be sending out that email with the document, with the attachments and the documents. If you see that email and you say, you know what, Emily, I love the Matriots. I'm deeply committed to your mission. That's the first thing that you always say. And then the second thing that you say is, I just don't think that this is the right committee for me this year. Just shoot me a note back. It is no challenge, no problem, but we have a big task this year. And the hope is to really change how Ohio looks, and how Ohio acts for women. So I am incredibly grateful for you and for your participation, even to hop on this call, but hopefully to be part of our research committee.
Hi.
If you have individual
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Tina.
No, this will be my first time. So once I get the packet and take a look at it, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions. So
We're here
I say
for
be
it.
prepared for any questions that I may have. And if I choose to do the in-person, if that's okay, that would be
Yep.
great too,
Yep, we would love
just
it.
to get some guidance.
I think that sounds fantastic. We, one of the in-persons that we'll be doing for both research and endorsements is on the first Wednesday in February. So anybody who wants to come to our office, we have a coffee break that happens from 1 to 3 every first Wednesday of the month. And this time we're going to be dedicating it to making sure folks are up and running with endorsements and with research, and also talking about our process for anybody who wants to know that as well. So that's one time. And then we can also do something that's a little later in the day, or a breakfast. People can probably pick. We're incredibly flexible, but Tina, don't ever hesitate to ask a question. They're one of our favorite things. We like electing women and we
Great.
like questions.
Okay, thanks so much.
Of course. Well, I'm never one to take up more time than I need to. So send us what questions you have. We will be here. I'm putting my email and Felicia's email into the chat, so that you can quickly get those. Emily.Schriver@matriotsohio.com. Oh, sorry, it should be matriotsohio.com off Felicia's. Okay. So disregard the first Felicia one. It should be matriotsohio.com. Go too quickly. And in the meantime, I want you to have just a wonderful week. Enjoy a little bit of slightly warmer weather that's left. And we will see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Tina. Bye, Andrea.
Bye-bye.